Hello everybody, welcome back to More Sins of the Father. It's going to be a very short video today, just one chapter. I've got some stuff that I've got to go and do, so yes. Where were we when we left off? Oh yeah, Martha had just reunited with the investigator who is going to be looking into Mr. Ford's death, and it happens to be her ex-boyfriend, and that was all awkward and painful and emotional and shit. So now they've gone back to the house. Let's see what happens there. So, chapter 10. Since she slipped out of the Ford residence before acquiring a key, Martha had to ring the doorbell. It was awkward, what with her ex-boyfriend stood beside her like they were teenagers again, and she felt like she was about to get a telling off for missing curfew. It was, rather unsurprisingly, Esther who answered the door. Her aunt stood there for a moment, glanced from one of them to the other, and then back again, before shrugging her narrow shoulders and opening the door wide enough for them to pass through, with a barely muted sigh of, well, that didn't take very long. Good evening, Miss Adamson, Parker smiled, being utterly and disarmingly polite and charming. Sorry to have disturbed you. Oh, nonsense, she waved him off with a slender hand. Martha, I assume you're both looking for your sister? She's still upstairs in the lounge with that scruffy boyfriend of hers. Thanks. I didn't know you'd gone out, the woman persisted, clearly hedging for gossip or something similar. Pleasant evening? A bit chilly, she replied, deliberately blithe. But it is October, I suppose, Esther pontificated, before finally deciding to give up and turn on her heels. As she headed back down the hall towards the kitchen where she'd seemingly come from, she added, over her shoulder, Remind me to give you a key. I'll do that. Martha and her companion remained in the hallway until she'd gone before heading upstairs. Martha didn't know whether or not her aunt had been informed of what Amanda had set in motion, and she didn't want to make things more awkward than they already were by being the one to expose that can of worms to the sunlight. She did, however, pause at the top of the staircase to clear up something. Turning to face Parker, she said, Amanda doesn't know about what happened to me. Nobody here does. I'm not ready to share it with them, so I'd appreciate it if you kept it that way. A shot of concern filled his eyes, but he nodded. Of course. Cheers. I appreciate that. Sordid business all taken care of, she turned left and knocked on the lounge door, simply so they didn't accidentally walk in on anything she didn't want to see, waiting until her sister's voice gave them the all clear before they opened the door and went inside. Amanda and Walsh were exactly where she'd left them, having moved to the sofa directly opposite the television. Her sister had her legs up across the young psychic's lap and looked much more relaxed than she had done earlier. Her eyes opened wide when she saw that Martha had not returned home on her lonesome. Super psychic Walsh didn't react, as if it had played out exactly as he'd envisioned it would, and he was 2 steps ahead of everybody else, smug little upstart that he was. Well, hello, her young sister beamed. Everything okay? Fine, Martha said, and then, simply because she saw her sister's boyfriend reaching for his glass and taking a generous mouthful of what appeared to be water, she added, It was a little awkward at first, so I took my top off. We're friends again now. Suffice to say, he did not see that one coming. Stifling a laugh that was far too childlike and amused, Parker addressed Amanda directly. I thought that I'd come over and take a look at the study now, if that's all right with you. Sure, she smiled. Go ahead, it's unlocked. Martha left it open. He nodded politely before turning his attention back to the older sibling, who, still feeling a little bit too smug, offered, Come on, I'll show you through. She closed the door behind them, leaving her sister alone again, loudly giggling in surprised happiness with her boyfriend. She felt a little bit mean for picking on Walsh, but he had it coming, and if that put a smile on Amanda's face, she'd try to not let herself feel too guilty about it. Especially not when she then caught Parker smiling out of the corner of her eye, and her inquiring glance was met with an amused, I want to feel awkward, but knowing Walsh as well as I do, I'm going to go ahead and assume that he deserved that. He did. As Amanda had not all subtly inferred, the door of the study was still unlocked from Martha's earlier infiltration. She pushed it open and stepped inside, allowing Parker to go in first so she didn't interfere with whatever it was he was looking for in there. The reality was she had no idea what a paranormal investigation entailed, and while she was very intrigued by it all, she wouldn't get directly involved. This was not her comfort zone. Parker cautiously went inside, taking a lengthy visual scan of the room. Everything was right where Martha had left it, books, arts and antiques. His initial observation complete, her companion then stepped further into the room, traversing the giant red rug. He set the aluminium attaché case that he'd been carrying down on the real wooden floor in front of the boarded-up glass windows. Turning to Martha, he asked, "Do you mind if I open these up?" She shrugged. "Do what you've got to do." Disengaging the temporary lock that was holding the cracked window frames together to keep the access point secure until it could be properly repaired, Parker carefully opened the glass doors, gazing down from where Mr. Ford had allegedly fallen to his final destination below. Seeing the state of the whole frame was still in, Martha made a mental note to have that taken care of, assuming that Amanda had been too emotionally strained to take on something so trivial. It was the least she could do. Leaving the window open, Parker came back into the room, opened the case, retrieved a small, metallic-looking electronic device that she set down on the space between the broken panes in the outer balcony, and a notepad, which he flipped open, making some notes before standing up and taking another look around the room, his dark brow furrowed deeply in concentration. Standing in the doorway, Martha felt utterly superfluous to requirements, but she had to admit she rather enjoyed watching him work, even if she didn't understand what he was doing. There was something comfortingly familiar about it, odd, considering none of her memories of the years that they spent together had him conducting a paranormal investigation in a deceased parent's study. More things changed the more they felt the same. After a few minutes, he asked her, "Do you know if anyone's tidied up in here recently, or if this is how the police left it?" "I have no idea," Martha said. "I could get Amanda." "No," he quickly waved the offer away. "It's all right. Can't do much at the moment without a proper reading on the place. Just making some initial impressions of what might have happened." "A reading?" she asked. "What's that, like a psychic reading?" "Yeah," he confirmed. "Walsh would normally do it, but seeing as though he's recused himself from the investigation, I've got to wait for a subcontract psychic to call me back and set up an appointment. It's a pain in the arse, but it's someone impartial, which is good." Martha sounded bemused. "Empire subcontract psychics?" "Occasionally it becomes necessary to seek outside help. There are 3 people officially employed by Empire, not including Maxwell, and out of us, only Walsh is capable of doing psychic readings, so we branch out when we need to. So far, no one we've ever subcontracted has taken Maxwell's offer to stay on full-time. I think that's because Walsh always makes sure that he introduces himself to them and lets them know they'll only ever play second fiddle to him, which they inevitably hate. Psychics can be so competitive." Not taking his deduction personally, she told him, "I had a look around when I was in here on my own earlier. I don't know if this helps you or not, but I can sense something. I still can. Some kind of something." Moving into the room past the red rug towards the artwork at the back of the room, Martha tried to focus on what she'd felt earlier. After a long moment, she shrugged and conceded, "I don't know exactly what it is. I think that it's magic rather than mystical energy. Something unnatural happened here." Parker frowned. Mr. Ford wasn't interested in magic. He never used to be, she confirmed. "You know as well as I do how much he hated all of that mumbo-jumbo. He used to tell me that my abilities were in my head and that I needed to grow up and stop acting like a child, living in my imagination. He wasn't simply a null, you know. He was a skeptic, violently so. He hated all of this." "I remember," he concurred unhappily. "It's been a long time since I even gave him a second thought, so I honestly don't know if he ever had a change of heart. Amanda told me he was very supportive of her when she presented psychic tendencies, so maybe he mellowed in his old age. Realistically, she doubted it, but she didn't need to state that out loud. Parker had known what her upbringing was like. He could make his own mind up about the dead man's tolerances. Either way, I doubt he would go on to become a practitioner. He simply didn't have it in him." Parker nodded. "I agree." "It's really strange, though," she said, gazing around the expansive room. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say that what I've been feeling was residual magic energy. Like someone was practicing it in here." After a brief pause of clear deliberation, Parker stated, "We have someone on staff who might know a bit more. She's not psychic and usually wouldn't do readings, but she's a brilliant practitioner. Magic is her speciality. If I asked her to come and take a look around, I'm sure she wouldn't mind. In fact, she'd probably enjoy it." "She's a witch?" Martha asked, genuinely taken aback. "Pagan," he corrected, though Martha wasn't sure if there was a difference. She didn't comment further, however. Magic was not something she was familiar with, and she wouldn't pretend to know better than somebody who was allegedly a brilliant practitioner of the arts. As much as it irked her not to be able to actively help in this instance, She'd sworn not to stand in the way and would do what was best for the investigation that her sister had sought out. She stated, "Yeah, I don't see how that could hurt." Parker checked the gold watch on his left wrist. "I could call her now while we're here. Amanda will need to agree, of course." "I'll go get her." "No, I'll do it," he countered, pulling his phone out of his pocket, glancing pensively down at it within his hands. "There are some other things that I want to ask her about anyway." Martha conceded, letting him go. Left alone in the study once again, she decided to take the opportunity to look at things a little bit deeper. While Parker was nearby, she'd never have dreamed of dropping her psychic defences for a while, but the room was perplexing her, and she wanted to see if she could root out what it was that she was missing, through threads of energy that she felt. When she was a young girl, she learned to batten down her mystical hatches, to lock her psyche up so very tight so that her unusual abilities didn't make everyday living unbearable. Back then it had essentially been a barricade, man-made and not completely effective, but it kept what it contained. It contained what it was designed to do. The downfall was her inner proclivities disliked being so forcibly restrained. Like a caged animal, they paced back and forth, growing more and more restless, more and more angry in captivity. It wasn't until she was abducted that she ever truly let go of her defences, and when she had, she suddenly found herself being forced to. Her nature assaulted her as viciously as it had attacked her captors. It was emotionally devastating, and not something she ever wanted to experience again. Following her liberation, when she was physically strong enough to do something about it, she'd vowed to embrace what had been locked away inside of her for so long. She came to terms with who she was and what she was, and she learned how to protect herself and others without smothering her inner needs. Her barriers were now only necessary because of how powerful she'd trained their abilities to become, not because she couldn't handle them or was afraid. Letting go was not the trauma that it had once been long ago. The cage had been replaced with a silk curtain, and all she needed to do was simply peel it back and take a calm, controlled look behind it, or let the sunshine that it blanketed shine through naturally. The action, in essence, was what she did in William Ford's old study once she was left alone, deftly yet carefully inching her defences aside as much as she needed to get a clear sense of what lingered inside of the room. While her natural makeup predisposed her to immediately seek out emotions, she knew that she could pick out other forms of non-visual energy. Magic would be fuzzy, but she didn't have the aptitude to tap into those wavelengths. But she should at least be able to get a sense of where the energy had been lingering, gently calling to her as it was. With her barriers ajar, the study appeared normal for the most part. As she worked through energy signatures that she knew and could attribute to certain people or things, she narrowed down what she was looking for. It wasn't very difficult, not when she was alone and could concentrate deeply. What was left behind resembled something akin to footprints under an ultraviolet light, a trail of intent that led away from where she was standing to a table on the far side of the room, and a particular stack of books piled on top of it. Being aware that she didn't have time to go and rifle through them, Martha made a mental note of their location, and continued to follow the trail which curved back around to a spot behind where she was standing, pausing in front of a painted canvas that was stood on a tall easel, one of 3 artworks displayed. Again, she told herself she'd investigate it later, proceeded to follow the energy trail where it wanted to lead her, directly into the centre of the room, to the big, disgustingly ornate red rug. A whisper of another new signature appeared on the periphery of her mystical eyeline, and she instantly recognised and attributed it as belonging to somebody that she knew far too well. She mentally took a step backwards and dropped her psychic protection back into place without any struggle or resistance, a good 2 seconds before Michael Parker reappeared at the doorway, and she was forced to feel things that wouldn't make her life any easier, a deep personal connection that would most likely cripple, not cure her. They made eye contact, and without saying it, he seemed to know what she'd been doing in his absence, and she couldn't help but wonder if that's why he'd left her alone, like he knew what she'd do, given space and opportunity to do so. Very shrewd. He asked, "Find anything new?" "Maybe," she confirmed, pointing to the red rug she had asked. "Will you help me lift this up?" He entered the room, prepared to assist, without needing to be given an explanation, and Martha couldn't help but feel a modicum of relief that Amanda had enlisted the help of somebody she knew personally and also knew her. Even after all the years that had passed and all the heartache and confusion that he'd endured by her hand, Parker still trusted that she knew what she was doing, that if she felt like something was amiss, it probably was. And Martha had a very bad feeling of what she sensed when she'd really truly taken a look at the Red Rook. Parker reached down and took hold of one edge of the heavy embroidered material, while Martha clasped the other. It was much heavier than it looked and difficult to move, almost as if something was keeping it in place, but she was stronger than she looked, and with an extra little bit of added grit, it gave up resisting and moved in their hands, shifting to the side with them as they stepped across the floor. Once it was pulled back and resituated on the other side of the room, the reason for Martha's discomfort became painfully clear. Parker cursed loudly, standing fully upright. "Is that what I think it is?" Dropping down onto her haunches, Martha covered her mouth with her hand. Then she nodded. A lot of things suddenly became apparent, and none of it was remotely good. "I'm bringing Olivia in," her companion stated, and she was then only vaguely aware that he once again left her alone in the room, only now with the evidence of a dead man's wrongdoing. Without thinking about what she was doing, Martha reached out as if attempting to touch it, but her hand was met with an invisible barrier that seemed to sense her attempted intrusion and wouldn't permit her passage over the threshold. Interesting. Very interesting. A sudden feminine grasp from the doorway made her head jerk up. It was Amanda. Her eyes wide in shock and her hand clamped around her mouth as if she was physically trying to prevent another guttural reaction escaping. Martha felt instantly awful. She'd been so shocked by their discovery, it had not occurred to her to stop Amanda witnessing it. Whatever the revelation meant, her gentle-hearted sister should have been protected. But now it was much too late. The sins of the father had been exposed, and Martha wasn't sure how she was supposed to protect them from it this time. Poof! Oh, what is it? And I'm not going to tell you today. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow to find out. What exactly was Mr. Ford hiding under the red rug in his study? And how does it relate to maybe what happened to him? So, yeah. Sorry, it was short. I'm leaving it on a little bit of a cliffhanger there, but we'll definitely be back tomorrow for more of that. And we can find out what's going on and what Martha and her friends are going to try and do about it. So thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate all of the nice feedback, all of the comments and everything. And I just want to give a very special shout out to my mum, who left some lovely comments on Facebook for me. Thank you, Mum. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more because I'll get emotional and I don't want to cry on camera. Yeah, so I'll speak to you all tomorrow. We'll carry on reading and we'll see what happens in the story. So take care.